around. So if you have a question, put your hand up. I'm going to start off, but if you have a question, put your hand up and we can get a microphone to you. So do please put your hand up now if you've got a question. We can get, okay, these two people. I haven't got my glasses on. Yeah, that's right, yeah. I'm going to start us off very quickly because, San, you talked about retention. So why are people leaving? I mean, is it? Well, I keep hearing about the hours, about the pay. I don't work in the industry, but it sounds like the BBC, frankly, low pay and odd hours. But why, is there one fundamental reason you're actually getting people, but then they're choosing to leave the profession, do you think?
I don't think there's one key answer to that. I think in reality it's a mix of things, and that mix and the dominance of that mix of one factor over another will be different for different organisations within the same sector. As the client organisation, we may have a slightly different mix to some of the contractor organisations. But the point I was trying to make actually is when you look at investment in diversity and diverse talent and skills, we quite often focus all of our time on the attraction part of that debate. And that's important because we need to feed the talent pipelines, and certainly we need to, as an organisation, given what we need to deliver in the second half of the RIS and into RIS 2. But actually what's just as important is what you're doing with those people when they're in the employee life cycle within your organisation. And actually, are they being led in an inclusive manner? And do they feel engaged to do their very best that you can get to that high-performing culture, certainly that we're aiming for. So I don't think it's necessarily working back from the key reason why people leave. For me, it's more of how people are managed, treated, etc. when they're with you, and recognising that actually there'll be the right time for people to leave your business and go elsewhere. But when they look back on their time with you, what's their reflection? What are they telling others about? And actually, how did they feel and how were they invested and led during that time with you?
Okay, Vip and from Darren, big companies, is there too much focus on the apprenticeships? And perhaps we're starting to get that right now, but actually no one's looking within the companies themselves at people who are just sidling off and going to other businesses, do you think?
I think you make a very good point there. Clearly the apprenticeship agenda has got a high profile, but that's one way of addressing the skills challenge. We've learned that reskilling people within your organisation, I think there was a point made before by Duncan about, why do we have technical people doing non-technical skills? We've broadened the outlook in terms of the types of university and courses we go to. If I wound the clock back a decade, we would go and find 50 graduate civil engineers in a graduate intake. It's now a mix of economics, English, mechanical, chemical, civil engineering, and that helps with the diversity of solution and that's fundamentally what we get paid to do, is provide solutions to customers, and you get a far better solution when it's a diverse background. But I mentioned things like the Young Offenders Program, reskilling people. There's not one thing you should do. You should do the lot, and that's how you're going to address the skills agenda.
Vip, presumably you'd agree with that.
Yeah, well, I think mainly for us, it's about giving people the opportunity to build and grow their careers, because that seems to be the big gap. People want to work on interesting projects, right? So that's one side of it. The other element of it is some people are probably a bit more mobile than others, and so what happens is that probably they get bored with the kind of things that they do. That's based on management, because people work for people at the end of the day, and if they've got good managers and got good leadership, right, what happens is that they will build and grow with the organisation. Otherwise, what happens is that you will get that staff churn, within the industry.
Nick, I'll bring you in a second, but let's go to a question first of all. So, who's first up? Yes.
Hello, thank you very much to the speakers. My name's Carol Valentine. I'm from Kent County Council, and I just wanted to ask what you would say are the key factors to a successful and sustainable apprenticeship programme. Some of us are much further behind than it sounds like you are. I work in highway maintenance, and we're just starting to look at this now after a number of years. And it's really, how do you get them in, keep them, what's the academic route for them, and how do you keep them, because the apprenticeship pay can be quite low, and I think that's why we get people dropping out. What happens in year 2 and 3?
Yeah, interesting point. Yeah.
If I can start the debate on that one, obviously CITB is a major apprenticeship provider, so there's another half of me behind this screen that says start by working with CITB, but in the context of this discussion and the open panel, I think it's very much about the level of support that the young people are provided with. Certainly from our experience, the most successful models are the ones which provide the most hands-on experience, the most activity, and the most mentoring and other pastoral support, to use the jargon, that helps the young people, typically, I imagine in a program such as yours, to be successful and to stick with it. Because young people are coming into an industry that they may have some unconscious bias about, they may have some prejudgments about, and often it's a case of making sure that those young people have the maximum opportunity to explore a whole range of different pathways, really, so that they can understand the longevity of the career and the apprenticeship that they're taking. But absolutely support that with personal hands-on support through mentoring, advice and other programs as well, rather than just the straight up and down training, delivery and work experience.
Yeah, I suppose people just feeling rewarded, don't they?
Yeah,
Really?
and being part of the team alongside that.
Yeah. What about you? Do you ever go to your apprenticeships after they've sort of come through the system and say what worked for you, what didn't work for you? Is there that kind of afterthought to find out what they liked?
Yeah. I think we've been on quite a journey with our apprenticeship schemes. It's fair to say I think we started when we were Highways Agency and took probably the easiest route, which was around those programs that you could easily attract people into and required as little maintenance from the organisation as possible. We've completely diversified our offering from project managers through to electrical engineers, civil engineers. And what comes with that is just a shift required from the organisation's capability to manage early talent in your business. But my particular advice to you, Carol, in terms of your question would be, yes, start small, but prove that it works with that small group. Make sure that you are as leveraging as best as possible your experienced members of staff to become the champions of those apprentices within the business, regardless of their age or background, and start to shift the organisation's thinking, if you can get the leadership buy-in around the messages as to how important that early talent group and the pipeline is for the organisation. And in terms of pay, I think it is a challenge, but I think it's more readily recognised that actually there is an apprentice rate of pay, and if you manage to attract the right sort of apprentices, actually I think there's an absolute buy-in to the opportunity that they'll be landing with your organisation, as long as you can make that as positive as possible.
I think from our point of view, looking at apprentices, it's really mainly due to it is about the locality, and a lot of apprentices, they do live local, and we need to appreciate that. And you have to start early on. I was talking about a STEM program earlier. And part of that is that there are a lot of people who don't want to go on to university early on in their careers. They may decide, just to stop at doing their GCSEs or O-levels and not go into that. But we really need to be out there. You really need to sell that story. And the best people to do it are the apprentices that we've already got, in terms of, actually sending them out locally, right, to try and give them the experience to say, oh, actually, this is what it's like from this peer group. And it is, because like I said, it really does matter when, a 16-year-old to a 16-year-old on a peer level has a conversation in comparison to if it's somebody a bit older, because, it is about the culture.
And you've got the graduation ceremony, haven't you, at lunchtime?
Yes, we have.
There was another question.
Alison Chippington from Morgan Sindall. San, I wanted to ask you about what specific things you're doing to make a more inclusive culture. We're finding we can get in a diverse workforce, but they're coming into a culture that's very macho. I joined it 25 years ago, and it's not bothered me, but I just wondered what you were doing to change the culture in Highways England.
Yeah. So, thank you for the question. a lot, actually, and I won't bore you with all of the details, but quite happy to speak to you afterwards. So there's something about the leadership in that whole debate. So what are we role modelling on behalf of the organisation? We've got quite a cultural change journey on our hands in terms of our aspiration and where we want to get to in the next couple of years. And we can't get there without that sort of leadership buy-in and us role modelling and leading the way. So I think that goes without saying. We've not always been great at that, but we're certainly trying to improve. There's a self-awareness journey that I think we've taken our senior leadership team on, which is actually how are we perpetuating the norm that we're trying to break away from. So there's something about holding the mirror up and acknowledging that all is not great, and actually that change starts with us. So that's one stream of work that we continue to build and deliver against. I think there are also programs that have helped us, but before I touch on those, we've done quite a lot to invest in our staff networks. We have a Leading Women network, which is going from strength to strength across the organisation, and actually is now national and appearing in regions. We've just got up on its feet LGBT, we call it LGBTQ network, and we have invested and tried to enable that on behalf of those members of staff rather than it being, you must set that up. We're trying to support that from the ground up. And that will sit alongside our disability sort of access for all network as well. So what we're trying to do is showcase that as an organisation, we are valuing difference, we are trying to create an inclusive culture, and we're doing that through actions such as supporting those networks. And then we have a number of programs that we're just trialling, and it relates to the apprentice point earlier, which is we haven't got all of the answers. These are complex problems that we're trying to solve. They involve people, so they are inherently complex. They absolutely link to our cultural aim. So we're trying stuff. So, for example, we launched a Women Returners program earlier on this year. We have seen 15 very, very talented individuals coming to work for us since last month who have the most amazing, rich and diverse CVs, but were struggling to get back into the world of work because of a gap, either through having children or an extended period of leave for caring for something or some kind of career break. And we're starting to see just how wonderful those results are from seeding those sorts of talented individuals into the business. There's more, but I won't bore everybody else with the details.
Darren, just quickly from you, do you think that is part of the issue? You know, you start day one, you walk into a room and everyone looks fairly similar and it's a bit laddie?
Fundamental. The environment within which you walk is going to influence how you behave. And that's not just about this macho business, it's whatever environment you create. So you say, what should you do? And I think Sam's answer, that there's a big long list of stuff we know we can do, and you've just got to get on with them and be brave and start them off. For example, I think I echo something like Duncan said earlier. You know, I was one of those classic, well, I haven't got a problem with it. And then when you play back a recording of the meeting you've just chaired and you hear, not bad language, but male language and simple little adjustments and really looking at your own unconscious bias is something particularly leaders can do. And therefore creating an environment whereby you can prevent the groupthink, I think San said earlier, and those sort of pack behaviors that do go on. And I think it was that Duncan mentioned earlier, it's probably more powerful when it's the men in the room that take that initiative and do it, and then create the space for that environment for the obviously these things that go on to be prevented. So there's a big long list. We've just got to do it all.
Nick, is there really an obvious generational difference, do you think, with attitudes like that? Are younger people much more?
I think there is, and that's one of the challenges I think the sector faces as a whole. The world of construction is changing, and most of us have experience of having done things in particular ways, as everyone has started to describe, and we're still to some extent stuck with that. But I think the whole area of inclusion and diversity needs to be blown wide open, because otherwise we won't meet the skills challenges we have. You know, we're excluding huge groups of the community from taking part, and that can't be beneficial, whether that's on a social level, a diversity level, or whether it's on an economic and productivity perspective.
Well, guys, thank you very much.